his mother. This video was released at 1 p.m. announcing that he's dropping out of the race. And he first talked about the successes of his administration before pivoting to say that he's suspending his campaign. So he blamed this on New Yorkers who are skeptical of him because of his now dropped criminal case, saying that he was unfairly persecuted, but understands that New Yorkers are still hesitant. He was charged in a 5-count indictment, including bribery and fraud last September, and he did plead not guilty, but he was accused of soliciting illegal campaign donations. Now, he also blamed the Campaign Finance Board for not giving him public matching funds. They have requested his campaign turn over documents related to that now dropped criminal case, and he has so far refused. Now, other of his allies were also caught up in investigations, as you remember, last year, and he's been facing a lot of pressure to drop out of the race from both President Donald Trump, some of his allies, and just other Democratic leaders even, who say that having a 4-way race will make it easier for Zohran Mamdani, to win the mayoral race. And many people are hoping that having a one-on-one matchup between Andrew Cuomo and Mamdani, polls showing right now that race is much tighter. So they are hoping that having Adams drop out will help Cuomo's chances. But that doesn't necessarily mean it will, because it's not really sure. We're not sure at this point where some of these votes are going to go. Now, Adams is polling at about 7%, 7 to 9% right now, and his name will still remain on the ballot. It's too late to remove his name off the ballot. So it's unclear if all of those votes would go to Cuomo. That's pretty unlikely. There's going to be some of those votes that goes to Liwa, and there's some of those votes that are even going to go to Mamdani. And then some of those people just also maybe aren't going to vote. So the race, I'll be very interested at least to see the next poll to see how Adams dropping out affects it.
And Morgan, he's been under so much pressure, almost daily about these rumors about why he should get out. One reason or another, there seemed to be no shortage of reasons that people had for encouraging him to step out of this race. But was there something that was a tipping factor at this point? Like, why now? Yesterday, he was tweeting, he was tweeting on his X account that he was in it for the long haul. People keep putting me down and saying I should drop out, but I'm in this all the way. Anything that you think or have seen may have been like the tipping factor here?
There has been a lot of whiplash in all of this right now. He even held a press conference on September 5th, so just a few weeks ago, insisting that he was going to be staying in a race, saying that these rumors are untrue, that he's looking around for a different job. There was talks that maybe even the Trump administration was looking at giving him an ambassadorship. However, that was kind of an issue for him since his campaign. He has a lot of legal fees. He owes his campaign money. And so he's a little bit underwater right now. So he couldn't really wait for an ambassadorship because that has to get approved by the Senate. That would take some time. So he was looking at a lot of different options. I was hearing from sources, and he was very defiant, though. And he was even blaming the media, saying that by the media printing and talking about some of these rumors that he could be dropping out of the race, that was hurting his chance. It was hurting his chance to fundraise, was hurting his chance to really run a real race. And so while many people were trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, they also looked at back earlier this year, he said that he was going to be staying in the Democratic primary, but then he ended up dropping out of the Democratic primary and running the general election. So that's something we've also been saying as we've been covering this, is that while he is saying, or he was saying that he was staying in the race, as you look at history and if you look at how he's been acting, you also have to still report that he was still considering and looking at other jobs. And now we see here, of course, that him dropping out of the race, despite, as you mentioned, Lisa, just a few days ago, insisting that he was staying in.
No, absolutely. And Morgan, there is so much for us to follow with this. Thank you. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. And of course, developments are coming into our newsroom fast and furious. We are streaming the latest live in the free Fox Local app. We'll have much more tonight on the 6 o'clock news and on My 9, and of course on the 10 o'clock news here on Fox 5. I'm Lisa Evers, and there'll be more right now on Fox Local, so stay with us there on the Fox Local app. And if you're watching us right now on Fox 5, we send you back to programming already in progress. And joining us.
This has been a Fox 5 special report.
And And joining us now to discuss the announcement is someone who's been following the mayor's race very closely, Kean University Provost David Birdsell. Dr. Birdsell, thank you so much for joining us. We're also joined by our Fox 5 political reporter via phone, Morgan McKay. But David, thank you for being with us once again.
Great to be here.
When you hear this announcement, are you surprised at the timing of this?
I'm not surprised at the timing. The mayor is finally bowing to the laws of political gravity. He has been unable to get out of the low double digits and now the high single digits ever since the indictments were proffered in November of 24. Those have been withdrawn by the Trump administration and with prejudice by a court decision subsequently. So they aren't coming back, but there are plenty of other potential charges waiting in the wings. And we can't forget that this administration has had 27 people with senior roles in the administration under indictment since the first day of office. That's a heavy millstone to try to drag upstream, and he finally bowed to the reality that that wasn't going to happen in this cycle.
And his numbers were mostly, in most polls, were in the single digits. He was the last of the main four candidates. What do you think were some of the factors? Do you think the corruption, were there other factors that the electorate just did not support him, despite some of what even his critics say were his biggest achievements, like getting crime overall down?
The steady drip of indictments, his closeness to the Trump administration, his fawning appearances with Tom Homan, not a popular figure in this city, nor is the president a popular figure in this city. All of these were net drags on the campaign. If you add to that the mayor's own off again, on again, with other positions not the mayoralty, and perhaps leaving office before the end of his term. It made it very difficult, and he said as much today. He's been saying as much for a few days now. It makes it very difficult to fundraise, very difficult to execute on strategy, and indeed he hasn't had campaign events typically understood for the last 7 to 10 days. So there is a lot that suggested that this was coming, if not today, imminently. Clearly it did happen today. It's not a surprise, and it's just impossible, in my view, at this stage, to envisage a strategy that would have delivered him the mayoralty from a position now more than 35 points down from the leader of the pack.
And when you look at the electorate, this is mostly a predominantly Democratic city. People have said in the past, if you're the Democratic incumbent, you're almost a shoo-in unless you really mess up. For re-election, you should have a tremendous advantage. What do you think the corruption allegations against his administration, that these were the main factor turning people off, or that he seemed distracted by that?
Well, I think it's both of those factors. I think it's people being turned off by the steady drip of indictments and allegations of mayor's personal corruption, as well as his proximity to a very unpopular national administration that raised real questions about mayoral independence, particularly during that period of time when he was under indictment, and then the administration was moving to suspend that prosecution, but not to eliminate it. They weren't willing to do so with prejudice. That was what the court imposed later. But all of that became a huge problem for this mayor at this time. And remember, even though there is almost 7-to-1 registration advantage for Democrats in New York City, New York has elected Republican mayors, Rudy Giuliani, Michael Bloomberg in his first term, then twice Michael Bloomberg as an independent. So having that Democratic line is not a lock, but right now it's looking very good for Zoran Mamdani, even if, to the point that Morgan was raising just a few minutes ago, all of his 7 to 9 percentage points of the vote were to go to Andrew Cuomo at this stage. Cuomo would still be 10 to 15 points shy of where he needs to be to run a competitive race against Zoran Mamdani. And that leaves us with a question of what happens to Curtis Sliwa, and does he in fact stay in this race with his, depending on the poll, 15 to 17% of the support. That's enough right there to give this race to Mamdani.
And David, what about the campaign finance board? Because the mayor was saying that all of the talk previously, that he was stepping out of that he was stepping down from running and being in this race, that it was costing him support, that he wasn't able to raise funds. But he was denied twice by the campaign finance board for matching funds. How significant was the whole money issue as well?
Well, the money issue is always extraordinarily significant, but he has only himself to blame in this regard. The big problem that the CFB had with his campaign was that they simply weren't disclosing what the campaigns are required to disclose in order to unlock that stream of dollars. New York has a very generous matching program. It means that candidates can raise $100,000 and get $800,000 in return from the city. There's no other jurisdiction in the country that matches that generously, but that was not a spigot available to the mayor, in large part because either they didn't keep the campaign records required by law in the first place, or they were unwilling to share them. So this was an own goal, a self-inflicted wound.
And then in terms of his ability to operate as mayor and to function, he said, my job is to focus on the city, but how difficult is it, you know, two years into his term, all of these hit with all of these scandals and these allegations and cases being brought against his top officials? What does that do to his ability to lead?
It undercut it in very significant ways. I'm reminded of a case going all the way back to the late summer of 2024, when he was very concerned about the migration crisis in New York, as he framed it at the time, and said that this was, his words, an existential threat to the future of New York. He was going with a number of other big city mayors to the White House to make the case face-to-face with then President Biden. But he had to come back to New York to deal with the first of the indictment scandals that was breaking at that very time. So even for something that he described in real time at that moment as perhaps a life and death matter for the city of New York, an extraordinary thing, by the way, for any mayor to say, but that wasn't enough to keep him from having to deal with his personal business, and that has been a pattern throughout this administration.
And David, what about the timing of this? Do you think there was anything like the straw that broke the camel's back? Because he was denying as recently as yesterday that he was going to step down from the race. What do you think about that? Was there any factor where he's just like, it's totally untenable, I might as well at least go out with my head held high?
I think that this was really the recognition, which he could have come to earlier, because it was very plain earlier that this is simply not going to happen. He is not going to be the next mayor of New York. So bowing out before suffering a humiliating election defeat on November 4th was top of mind. This was just the moment where he realized that he couldn't go any further and decided to end the bleeding now.
And then in terms of the race moving forward, we know you have to go very, very soon. In terms of the race moving forward, is it pretty much a done deal that Mamdani is going to be the next mayor, or are there any scenarios where that might not be the case at this point?
Oh. There are certainly scenarios where that might not be the case. There are potential unknowns. Maybe there are skeletons in his closet that nobody has surfaced that will come out in the last 3 to 5 weeks of the campaign. It's unlikely, but it's always possible. There are 2 debates coming up on the 16th and 22nd, I believe, and he could have a terrible performance at one of those debates, say something that alienates vast swaths of the electorate and opens up a lane for Andrew Cuomo. There are any number of things that could happen between now and then. But with every passing day, those things get more and more likely, less and less likely, fewer in number. With Mamdani right now polling in the mid-40s in pretty much every poll, he's not over that magical 50% mark where it's just a lock at that phase, but he has a very, very strong lead. And remember, unlike the primary where you have a ranked choice process, this is first past the poll. If he is the leading vote getter, regardless of how many votes the other 2 candidates get, if this remains a 3-candidate race, then he's the next mayor of New York City. And that's said and done. Right now, there is nothing obvious out there in the field that will knock him off that perch. But there are opportunities with those 2 debates.
And David, you've seen many campaigns. In terms of Mamdani's lead, some people were saying, oh, he's a social media phenomenon. He's campaigning with slogans. But then he's also had a really strong ground game with the canvassing, the door-to-door, the just typical, standard, traditional method of doing politics in New York City, person to person. What do you think overall of his campaign? And were any of those factors the reason he's so far in the lead against the others?
This has been an exceptionally well-run campaign. It's a campaign that flew under the radar for a long while in the early days of the primary, largely because he was campaigning in relatively non-traditional ways on social media through appearances with influencer endorsements from the left wing of the party. And these things mattered a whole lot more than a very flat-footed Cuomo campaign was able to figure out until too late in the primary season to do anything about it. And there's no one else in this field on either ticket, Republicans or Democrats, who has shown the kind of media savvy and just the sheer charisma that Zohran Mamdani has provided for voters on this campaign trail in the primary and in the GE. I will note that he hasn't made many mistakes. I think he made a pretty significant mistake a week and a half ago when he vowed to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu should he appear in New York, which of course he did for the UN General Assembly just this week. But he's invoking the International Criminal Court, which is the product of a treaty to which the United States is not a signatory. So it inflames what is perhaps one of his potentially weaker issues and highlights that he doesn't appear to understand the legal basis for mayoral action in arresting a foreign head of state. Small beer, perhaps it's inside baseball that nobody cares about, but it's illustrative of the small number of mistakes that this campaign has made ever since the opening of the primary. And
how closely will people nationally be watching this? Because a lot of people are saying, well, what happens in New York, it's kind of like reading the tea leaves for other political races and also movements across the country. Or is that reading too much into it?
No, people are going to be looking at this very, very closely, Lisa, and I think they may be over-interpreting because New York is a different jurisdiction than any of the rest of the country. We know that very, very well. But the appeal of the progressive message, the appeal of the focus on affordability, even candidates, I mean, right now on November 4th, we have an interesting three-way experiment. You have two Democratic candidates for governor, both members of the House of Representatives, both relatively centrist women with a background in defense intelligence in the case of Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, and in the military in the case of Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey. And they have decided that it's that middle-of-the-road political culture, but even they're emphasizing affordability issues as part of their pitch to the voters in Virginia and New Jersey, respectively. Zohran Mamdani has made that absolutely the chugging train at the front of his campaign, and people are responding to it. And it is interesting that crime, which is at the very top of the agenda at the end of 2024, has now dropped to number 3 in most polls. Top of every poll right now is affordability, and he gets some credit for putting that on the menu. Plainly, there are all kinds of external pressures on everybody's budgets, but this has proven to be a very appealing message. The big question is, does he have proposals that can actually be implemented, and if implemented, address, much less solve, these problems? That's what we're going to see. But this is plainly a race that will be decided to a large extent on the basis of people's economic anxieties about affordability.
No, absolutely. David, I'm not sure if you could stay with us any longer. If you have to leave, I'd like to let me know if you have to go. But if you can stay with us, I'd love to have you stay on with us just for a couple more minutes as we bring in Morgan McKay, our political reporter. Is that cool?
I can stay with you for a couple more minutes.
Okay,
Happy
great.
to do it, Lisa.
All right, thank you so much. Morgan, when you see this announcement finally coming today, what was your reaction when you saw that?
I think our reaction, it was probably shared by many fellow reporters, was why is Sunday? But I think he gets it out of the way now, and then he will probably take questions likely at an event tomorrow, I'm assuming, if he has an event. But I think he has made it pretty clear that he would decide before October 1st. That was one of the things he had talked about for a while. He said that he would take an internal poll and decide whether or not to drop out before October 1st. That was one of the rumors that even his spokesman confirmed a few weeks ago. And then 2 days later, the mayor came out and said that that wasn't true. The internal polling was just to decide what sort of messaging strategy they should come together before they want to reach out to voters, before October 1st. Because he said once October hit, that's when his campaign was really going to start to ramp up. And he even said on Thursday, he dismissed rumors saying that he was going to be dropping out. And he said that he is actually meeting with his staff later in the day to come up with a strategy on how exactly to target voters and how they were going to be ramping up their campaign in October. So we have seen a lot of whiplash with him over just the last month. But if you look back at his entire mayoral term, I think it's a little telling to see just how tumultuous his entire tenure has been as mayor. If you look back, even, last year with the indictment, before that, he had his police commissioner had to resign. He's had 3 police commissioners, 4 if you count the acting police commissioner, Tom Donlin, who's now suing the mayor's administration for unlawful termination, among some other things. And so we're seeing a lot of people leaving his administration. He's had about 4 communication directors. So he's had 2 schools chancellors. So he's had a lot of different people leading pretty important agencies.
And many of those agencies, and then so many, and then several agencies in New York under a federal monitor. David Birdsell, in terms of this tumultuous nature that Morgan was describing, we've seen that. A lot of people have complained about disorganization, like even this morning, an event that was supposed to happen at 9 o'clock gets canceled at 9:25 after crews are already in place and people have already scheduled it for the new schedule. What do you think about the nature of how he has conducted himself as mayor?
Well, let me say at the top that the mayor does get some credit for reductions in crime. He does get some credit for improvements in school outcomes. There are some things, he does get some credit for building some housing, or at least opening up some leases, and that's important. But this administration has been chaotic from the get-go. And Morgan gave you some examples. She talked about the change out in police commissioners, which seems finally to have stabilized with Jessica Tisch. But there's still a lot of churn leading up to that point, and widely shared reports of mayoral interference in the business of the department. We look at changes at the Department of Education. We look at the fact that none of the original deputy mayors are still standing. This makes it very, very difficult to sustain policy. It makes it very, very difficult when you're constantly changing personnel to actually keep policies front and foremost in what's happening on the ground. He consistently talks about people at the deputy commissioner level, people who aren't necessarily churning out of office, but it makes it really hard when the top slots are in such a constant state of flux. So I think chaotic is a polite term for what we've seen over the course of these last 3.5 years.
Definitely a lot of changes. Morgan, in terms of his next step after mayor, after December 31st, what do you think? Or what are you hearing? Because you have a lot of sources that you talk to.
I think we can expect him to maybe show up working for a different company. One source recently I was speaking with, I think there's maybe a possibility he could get a job with maybe one of the casino bids that are going on right now, maybe leading something in that sort of sense. It's very unclear right now. I know he's had a lot of job offers. He's correct in the fact that he could likely get a lot of different types of jobs, after being mayor. But I think we're going to kind of see just what's next for him. He did mention in his video that this is not the end of his public service, so kind of leaving the door open to maybe exploring another job as a public official, maybe some way down the line. I think right now he would have a hard time getting reelected as a city council person, let's say. But I think, he was kind of left the door open today in that video, saying that he would be looking at different options. I don't know about the Trump administration anymore. I know that was some talks earlier on about last month about potentially having him join the Trump administration in some sort of way. I think that has died a little bit, but again, it's a little unclear, and who knows, maybe he has been offered something, and so we'll just have to see and wait.
Absolutely. David, what's your opinion on that? Next steps or next moves that might be open to him? Or is it all dependent on whether there's more cases?
I'm with Morgan on this one. We just don't know. There are any number of possibilities, and she's absolutely right. He did say that this was not the end of his public service, but it's very, very hard to imagine that he will once again return to elective office. It's hard to imagine being able to fundraise after having a stop again, start again campaign of the sort that we've just seen from the primary through the general election. So there may be a role for Eric Adams, but it will almost certainly be on the private side if it happens. And there have got to be some questions that a number of people have about the level of his influence with a city that probably at this stage in most quarters wants to turn the page.
And I think there was also a question too, like when we would do, man on the street, woman on the street interviews and asking people what they were thinking, what their concerns are, about the various different candidates. People would say, how could he not have known about all of these issues that were going on and these allegations against all his top staff? Is it possible that he just did not know and this was done without his knowledge? And I think that was something too that stayed with people for a long time. But does he now go out, David, as in these last several months of his mayoralty, does he go out now trying to build some kind of a legacy or rebuild his image with the public?
Well, we may see that now that he's no longer a candidate, that he can make a somewhat more plausible argument for a disinterested review, a politically disinterested review of what he's been able to accomplish as mayor. We'll see if he sticks to that knitting in the course of the next 3 months or so. But it's hard to see how the legacy here is not going to be stamped by scandal, chased from office to a large extent because of the 27 people, 28 if you include the mayor, who have been indicted along the way, including the people who were absolutely closest to him, often for periods of 20 years and more, and who have been accused of some pretty sordid things, and in some cases convicted of some pretty sordid things. So lots to unpack there, and the historians will have a field day with the Adams presidency in due time, mayoralty, in due time.
And Morgan, when you look at what his plans for the weeks ahead, do you think he's going to try to do something to shore up his image with people or be out more in the public? Because we saw, we saw when after the scandals, after his first legal troubles, he was out in the community more, and people were saying, oh, he's doing what he should have been doing the first couple of years when he was in office. He's out here with the community groups. He's out here talking to the people. He's out there in the churches and out there in a very, community-oriented way. Any thoughts on what we might be seeing from him the next couple of months?
Well, I think you guys are exactly right in the sense that Adams has made a lot of gains when it comes to reducing crime, when it comes to adding housing. He did have some successes in his mayoral term, but now as we're looking back, I think there will always be that cloud that hangs over his mayoral term, and that is this indictment. It's the turnover. It's the 4 deputy mayors leaving. It's the 4 police commissioners. It's the 2 school commissioners. If you look back, you can see that cloud hanging over his mayoral term, and I think that will be hard for him to shake and move forward from. But in his video, he did say that he did warn, without naming Mamdani, he did warn that there were radical, divisive agendas. And without naming Cuomo as well, he also kind of took a veiled swipe at him, saying that people like Cuomo cannot be trusted. So I am going to be very curious to see if Adams does decide to come out and potentially endorse somebody in the race, or if he decides to just step out and just kind of let the race go. But I would be curious to see if he does decide to endorse maybe one of the candidates in the race.
All right. Well, Morgan Mackay, our Fox 5 political reporter, and Dr. David Birdsell, Provost of Kean University, thank you very, very much for joining us for this. We really appreciate it, for helping us understand this big decision that came out today. And now let's hear from the mayor in his own words. This is the video he put out on social media just minutes ago announcing that he is ending his campaign. Let's watch.
Nearly 4 years ago, Gracie Mansion became my home. Who would have thought that a kid from South Jamaica, Queens, growing up with learning disabilities could one day become the mayor of the greatest city in the world. I cannot thank my mother enough for instilling in me the values she lived by. I hope every parent can use my life as an example for their child during challenging moments. Only in America can a story like this be told. When I was elected to serve as your mayor, I said these words: "This campaign was never about me. It was about the people of this city, from every neighborhood and background, who had been left behind and believed they would never catch up. This campaign was for the underserved, the marginalized, the abandoned, and betrayed by government. Since then, it has been my honor to be your mayor, and I'm proud to say that we took that victory 4 years ago and turned it into action, making this city better for those who have been failed by government. I felt immense pride serving you every day, and look at what we accomplished together. We built more housing in one term than any administration before us, and removed barriers to build even more. We drove crime down so far that this year we are on track to have fewer shootings and murders than at any point in our city's history. We raised test scores and attendance through bold education reforms. We made record investments that fueled our economy and drove employment to all-time highs. And we lowered costs for working and low-income families, expanding funding for rental vouchers, childcare, and household costs, while eliminating the income tax burden for more than 500,000 New Yorkers. Even so, I know many New Yorkers have yet to feel the full impact of these historic achievements. I know many are still worried about affordability, about safety, and their future here. But trust me when I tell you, what we've started will continue to reach every community in this city. It's not always easy to see the impact of good policy in just 3 years. I also know some remain unsure of me after the unfortunate events surrounding my federal case. I was wrongfully charged because I fought for this city. And if I had to do it again, I would fight for New York again. And yet, despite all we've achieved, I cannot continue my re-election campaign. The constant media speculation about my future and the Campaign Finance Board's decision to withhold millions of dollars have undermined my ability to raise the funds needed for a serious campaign. I hope that over time, New Yorkers will see this city thrive under our leadership, and that policies we put in place should be continued and expanded. I hope you will see that despite the headlines and innuendo, I always put you before me, always. I'm proud of the historic leadership team we built, appointing the first Dominican, Indian, and Filipino deputy mayors, the first woman to serve as fire commissioner and police commissioner, the first Korean commissioner at Small Business Services, the first Spanish speaker to lead the NYPD and DOT, and the first Jewish woman to head the NYPD Intelligence Division. We built leadership that looks like New York. That mattered to me because at my core, I'm still Dorothy Adams' son, raised with the values she instilled in me, forged in my church and in my community, tested again and again in the fight for justice. Those values, working class values, would never allow me to betray my city, They have always guided me to ask and answer one simple question: how do I help those who need it most? Whoever follows me at City Hall must continue the work we started, lowering the cost of living, investing in quality of life, and staying laser focused on reducing crime and disorder through investments in policing, mental health, substance abuse care, homelessness services, and community-based initiatives. But I must also sound a warning. Extremism is growing in our politics. Our children are being radicalized to hate our city and our country. Political anger is turning into political violence. Too often, insidious forces use local government to advance divisive agendas with little regard for how it hurts everyday New Yorkers. Major change is welcome and necessary, but beware of those who claim the answer to destroy the very system we built together over generations. That is not change, that is chaos. Instead, I urge New Yorkers to choose leaders not by what they promise, but by what they have delivered. Although this is the end of my re-election campaign, it is not the end of my public service. I will continue to fight for this city, as I have for 40 years since the day I joined the NYPD, to make our streets safer and our systems fairer. The quest for justice is far from over. Inequality persists, innocents still suffer. New Yorkers deserve better every single day. And until the end of my term, I will fight for just that. We face the fallout of COVID, a surge in crime, an unprecedented migrant crisis, and economic devastation all at once. And together, we turn things around by listening to everyday people and providing solutions instead of speeches. That gives me hope. That gives us a roadmap to a better future. My fellow New Yorkers, this is your city. Its leaders work for you. I am one of you. My story is your story. I lived the struggle, but I never stopped loving this city. That is why I ran for mayor, to turn my pain into purpose. And I will keep fighting for the city, no matter what, from City Hall or beyond, because I am a New Yorker, and fighting for our city is just what I do. Thank you, and God bless New York.
And there you have it, the mayor in his own words just moments ago announcing he is ending his re-election bid. And Governor Kathy Hochul releasing a statement just moments ago as well, writing, quote, "For the last 4 years, I've been proud to work with Mayor Adams to make New York safer, stronger, and more affordable. During that time, we have delivered much-needed housing for New Yorkers, including the passage of the mayor's visionary City of Yes plan. We have connected more New Yorkers to mental health services and supportive housing. We've driven down crime in our subways and gotten illegal guns off the streets. I have been grateful for his partnership. He leaves New York City better than he inherited it, and that will always be central to his legacy." Again, that's Governor Kathy Hochul on Mayor Adams dropping his re-election bid. And let's just bring in for a moment our own Fox 5 political reporter, Morgan Mackay. Morgan, just final word really quick on what do you think, how do you think he's going to be covered these next several months now that he's no longer a candidate?
Hey, Lisa. Well, definitely take off some pressure from him. Definitely. As he mentioned in his video, he's been receiving a lot of pressure, not only from Democratic leaders and even President Donald Trump and his allies, to drop out of the race in order for another candidate, likely Andrew Cuomo, since he's polling the highest out of the three, Cuomo, Adams, and Curtis Lewa. That by him bowing out, they're hopeful that all his votes will then go to Cuomo to make it easier to beat Mamdani, who is a Democratic socialist, and some are concerned about the impact that will have on the city. and nationally even on national Democrats trying to seek midterm reelection next year, some of those moderate Democrats. Some Democrats are also concerned how Mamdani's, if he were to win, how that would impact them. The New York State Democratic Party Chairman Jay Jacobs, for example, refused to endorse Mamdani, saying that he believes that Democratic socialists don't belong in the Democratic Party. So what we're seeing right now, I think, for Mayor Adams in terms of over the next few months, at least, tomorrow, if he does hold any public events, he'll definitely be mobbed by questions from reporters who do want to see exactly, what's next, maybe what led to his decision. He hasn't really gone into too much detail about what exactly led to his decision. He did kind of take a swipe at Mamdani in his video, saying that people need to be aware, saying, quote, "Beware of those who claim the answer is to destroy the very system we built together over generations. Instead, I urge New Yorkers to choose leaders not by what they promise, but by what they have delivered."
Exactly.
So he will definitely be potentially going after Mamdani, and we'll have to see if he does endorse maybe Cuomo in this race.
We will. And Morgan, I know you'll be keeping us posted on that from the campaign trail. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your knowledge and experience with us on this. And thank you for joining us on the Fox Local app. We'll have much more tonight on the 6 o'clock news on My 9 and on the 10 o'clock news on Fox 5. Arthur Chiam will be back here at 8 p.m. for Newsroom Live on Fox Local. I'm Lisa Evers. Have a good afternoon.
This has been a Fox 5 special report.
People there are talking, special agents are talking to the people that were in that church. That's one thing. We also don't know the mechanics. How did he get into the church? The police chief seemed to say that he smashed his car through the front door of the church, which, that in and of itself is a little hard to do. And then he started opening fire. How he set the fire, we believe it was a deliberately set fire. But how did he do it? How could he set a fire so much that it caused that church to become so fully engulfed and really so quickly? Some people apparently were able to get out. We just saw the one person that was there. He got out. It looks like he says his windshield was hit by the bullets. Again, I think that these are things that the police are going to have to put together, the authorities are going to have to put together to determine why this happened. And again, we now know that the feds, the state, and local authorities all involved. They are focusing now on Grand Blanc, Michigan, and at this church of the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, it really is all hands on deck right now. Everybody descending on Grand Blanc Township, just trying to help piece this all together and try and figure out why what happened this morning took place in the first place. And this is going to take a while. There were hundreds and hundreds of people who were inside the church at the time of the shooting. As Charlie mentioned earlier, many of these people were brought to a secure location, so investigators could begin interviewing them. And they need to talk to each and every one of these people to try and get a sense as to how this happened. And that is going to help them piece together a motive and why this all took place in the first place. I mean, just horrific. The fact that 10 people were shot. We know that one person was killed, multiple people in critical condition, multiple people in stable condition. And from what I understand, Ingrid Kelly, she is out at the scene right now. She's been able to track down a resident there